Good evening. I'd like to ask everybody to rise for the playing of the national anthem. The municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it's located on the lands of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and the Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of the Chippewa of the Thames First Nations. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and added Tenawat Nation, and Mississauga Nation, sorry. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and the water on the municipality of Central Elgin. I'd like to remind council of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. And this evening we have our first delegation from Kyle Cronk. I'd like to invite him to approach.
There we go. I'm not used to high technology like that. Thank you for having us, council, and thank you for letting my wife and I attend to discuss this important matter to us. The Ollie Drain, or the oily drain, runs through our property at 3887 Old Dexter Line. And I believe Mr. Brooks has brought you up to speed on some of the history of the drain in a meeting that you guys had a little while ago. I've submitted some photos and some videos, or a video. And I think maybe if you watch the video first, it'll help explain where I'm coming from or where we're coming from. So this is the exodus, or the terminus of the oily drain down into the water at the toe of our property. So the drain is 18-inch high volume polypropylene pipe, and it's that's what it produces after even pretty much all summer, but after a rain for sure. And that is right after the pipe was installed. And you can see the amount of water that's coming out of that pipe at the toe of my hill, or our hill. So that kind of explains why I'm here. And then some of the photos, that's a lot of water going down through that pipe. So, and then we can go see that. And then the photographs. So what's happened? The the drain is in about the middle of our property, and to the east of our property are these photos. And in the last two years, just less than 2 years, we've lost 75 feet of hill. That kind of explains why I'm here. So and the only place we've lost this 75 feet at the top of our hill is just east of the drain. And it runs for almost 1,000 feet. And the video shows kind of the volume in that one picture. If we could just move it up. This was the other way, sorry, right there. That is how much water comes out of that pipe. That was when the drain was broken prior to, actually right after we bought the property. Bought the property in 10 and in 11, that's when the drain broke. And it comes out of there like a fire hydrant. So it's draining 128 hectares of land to the north of us, and it's all farmland and it's all tiled. During the design of this drain, after it broke, we asked for, at the terminus of the drain, a cement diffuser into the lake, exactly the same as the Barnum's Gully has, and we didn't get that. So I believe what's happening here is that the force of that water coming down that pipe is pushing the literal drift and sediment away from our toe, and starving the toe and the sediment to the east of the drain. Like I said, the erosion in front of our house and our shop is about 75 feet in the last 2 years. And that's really unheard of because it's supposed to be about 1.7 meters per year. And this is probably 10 times more than it's supposed to be. In total, we own about 3,000 feet of frontage, and this erosion has done up to 1,000 feet to the east. So why am I here? We could spend $100,000 on a coastal engineer to find out if I'm right or if I'm wrong about the sediment. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put in a claim to the drainage people and have an engineer come out and see if I'm right or wrong. So what do? I believe there's a better solution. So we're here to ask today, my wife and I, for your cooperation for 4 reasons. The drain is a Central Elgin responsibility under the Drainage Act. Our property is eroding at an escalated rate because of the drain, and we're running out of time to save our house. We don't want to spend any more money on lawyers and engineers, and I don't believe Central Elgin does, or any of the upstream land users. So what's our choices? We could file a drainage repair application. You guys could hire a coastal engineer to investigate, and we could charge the upland water users in Central Elgin, and Central Elgin pays its portion, and the engineers come up with a repair or not a repair. Or this council can simply support our application for a 100-meter application for a revetment that is presently in front of Kettle Creek. My wife and I would install the revetment, have the revetment installed, and there would be no erosion to the east of the drain for a very long time. What's the benefits of this, of our request? There's no cost to Central Elgin, no cost to the landowners upstream. The longevity of the drain is increased, and we save our land. In the history of in 2010, we purchased the property. In 2011, the drain broke. And I think you know the rest of the story from Mr. Brooks's report. The drain's going to fail again at some point in time. At the present rate of erosion, the drain is causing, it'll be sooner than later. If we install a revetment and the drain pipe is placed over top of our revetment, then that stops the erosion and prolongs the life of the drain and our land. Again, at no cost to Central Elgin, at no cost to anybody, no cost except for our cost. We spent a long time trying to get a permit from Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. We ourselves have spent over $100,000 on engineers' reports for the design and the slope stability reports. The last stage is to get approval for the permit from Kettle Creek. Kettle Creek wants one more piece of paper. They want a drawing of an access road, and our geotech engineer has already done it. And with your support for this project, we believe and hope Kettle Creek will work more cooperatively with us. If this council supports this application for the revetment, It will be good for everyone. Central Elgin, the landowners upstream on the drain, and obviously help save our house and our shop. This brings me to the house. Mr. Brooks, I hope briefed you on our house at the same time he spoke to you about the drain. They were all interconnected at that time. The house is getting close and it needs to be moved sooner than later because of the accelerated erosion. We are also asking for this council support to expedite the building permit process with your staff to get the house away from the top of the bank before it cannot be done. So in closing, we are asking for this council support to build our revetment on our property at no cost to Central Elgin, simply by producing a letter of endorsement supporting the revetment that we can give to Kettle Creek. A revetment that will ultimately benefit all. It will help save Central Elgin's infrastructure, help save the drain itself, help save the upstream landowners who ultimately will pay for the drain if it needs to be repaired, and to help us save our property and our house. Thank you, and if you have any questions.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Cronk? Councilor Watson?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Mr. Cronk, you've done some work with an environmental engineer. Did they say that the house and buildings could be saved potentially going forward with your revetment, and for how long?
The revetment was designed for 100 years. It was designed by Milo Sternum, a coastal engineer. All in all, that cost us a lot of money to get that designed. At the time, the house had 40 years at 1.7 meters. So we had lots, and it was outside the stable slope allowance. The shop now is getting close to the stable slope allowance. So we have to move fairly quickly. The house itself, we're going to move it forward and it will be outside this stable slope allowance. If that answers your question.
How much further forward are you going to move that house?
The house we want to move approximately, it'll probably be 75 to 80 feet forward. Because we have to stay away from the road allowance a certain distance, and I think that's 20 meters or something like that.
Councilor Connors?
Yeah, through you,
Or
Chair.
Councilor Watson? Sorry.
Some of those properties down along there, they had properties on both sides of the road. So your property doesn't have property on both sides of the road down there, the old road?
That is correct. We only have the one side. We have 14 acres.
Yeah.
In our agreement with Central Elgin, we're going to reduce that to 8 acres, which is the more depth from the lake part of the property.
Ms. Greeno?
Council, if you do have questions, I might propose that a recommendation to push this or move this to staff, and that we could bring back a report that might answer any questions that you may have.
Councilor Halpin?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Greenhall, if we make that motion, do you prefer us to give you all of those questions now or following the meeting?
If you have some that you'd like to express now, and I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, we certainly can accept them. If not, we could also be, as we're building, to hear from council what information you may need.
Councilor Halpin?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, since we are all here. To Mr. Brooks, could you please explain to us a little bit about when it comes to expediting permits, what we can and what we have obligations as far as the timeline on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Halpin, being that.
I think you're muted, Mr. Brooks.
Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
Jeff, actually, I can hear you. I think the council's room cannot hear you. But I'm hearing you well.
Can we text Delaney? Maybe they don't have their speakers on.
I think, council, if I may, Mr.
I
Chair,
just
we seem to
texted.
have some technical difficulties connecting to Mr. Brooks online with his audio. If council would like to put forward questions, I'll be willing to write them down and accept them to be to answer.
Councillor Graham.
I think we already had this conversation with Mr. Brooks. He gave us an overview of it. I don't see the need to defer it any further. If there are questions, oh, it looks like Jeff might be able to speak now.
You probably can't hear me, but
We can hear you, Jeff.
oh, you can hear me now. Sorry about that. So in regards to the expediting the building permit, my suggestion would be to have a report come back from the chief building official on the ability to expedite those permits. The chief building official does not sit within my department, so I can't give a thorough answer on what the CBO would or would not be able to permit as far as an expedited house moving permit.
Councillor Graham.
And sorry, just to pick up on that. So, like I said, I think we've already discussed this. Jeff's already give us an overview of it. I don't see a need to defer it. I think that we need to, in my opinion, support this fellow in what trying to save his land here. And if it seems like our agenda is not that thick tonight, so if there are any other questions, we could probably get them out of the way tonight and move forward with making a decision here.
Ms. Greeno.
If I might, thank you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Graham. The one area that Jeff had brought forward was having a report come from our chief building officer. And so we would not be able to speak to anything that he may need to add as far as the moving of the house and permits to do so.
Councillor Graham.
I think we could deal with that through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Greeno. I think we can deal with that when that time comes. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But right now, I think Mr. Cronk is only looking for a decision on if council is going to support him with his KCCA application. So I don't think we need that information on being able to move the house prior to making a decision if we're going to support him or not.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Would it be reasonable then for us to divide that motion? It sounds like Councillor Graham would like to go forward and send a letter to the Conservation Authority, but requesting that we expedite the building permit would sort of be a separate issue anyway. And we want to make sure we're doing things within the scope of our powers.
Ms. Greeno.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so council is aware, there is no motion on the floor at this moment in time unless we would have to have a motion put forward. If you're asking, it would maybe be specific to the ask.
Councillor Graham. Oh. Sorry, I didn't see whose hand was up first. Councillor Connors.
Through you, Chair, what are the timelines? So, Mr. Cronk, what is your timeline to be able to move this forward? What is your planning timeline? And maybe from Jeff, what is the timeline that it would take to get the information back from the chief building official?
I think you're probably correct when you divide it into two. I wasn't probably thinking that it would be an issue, but I appreciate the thought process here. So timeline to move the house. We have until the end of 2024 to get that done. Based on our agreement with Central Elgin. So so that can be a separate issue. The only thing that is, and I'm not sure exactly how the process works for building permits, but we would like to have that house moved like during the summer months. So if we had the process now, maybe it is a 6-month process and we can move the house in June and everything's fine. I don't know. And then the second process is the sooner the better. Like the sooner the better I can get in front of Kettle Creek and get this permit finished.
Councillor Graham.
I'd like to put the motion on the floor that we fully support Mr. Cronk and his application to KCCA for the revetment.
Is there a seconder? Screen.
If I might again, council. While a deputation came, deputations do not put motions on the floor. Council will be making a motion. So right now we have a motion from Councillor Graham that she would like to ask council for the full support in the application for the revetment. That is the only issue you are dealing with right now. You can choose to take the remaining information away for your information purposes. You can thank Mr. Cronk for it. You can choose to give council staff direction to how you'd like us to address it. Or you may just simply have the one motion and address the motion as it stands right now.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Graham's motion? Councillor Halpin, seconds? Okay. All those in favor? Oh, hang on. Delaney, can we get clarification on the motion?
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that council support Mr. Kyle Cronk's proposed revetment application before the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, and that staff be directed to send correspondence to Kettle Creek Conservation Authority indicating the same.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that motion passes. Councillor Halpin, you had a question?
May I also make a motion that we thank Mr. Cronk and receive for information his delegation, and that we request staff to bring forward a report as far as the expedition of the permit?
Sure. Is there a seconder for Councillor Halpin's? Councillor Connors? Councillor Connors?
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that council receive the request from Mr. Kyle Cronk regarding an expedited building permit to move his residence, and that staff be directed to return a report with information on the request to a future meeting of council.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Cronk.
Thank you, council, very much. Have a good weekend, or a good week, I guess, so far.
Thank you. Moving on to the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Anybody see any errors or omissions or?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, there were no minutes moved forward in this meeting. It's just a placeholder for you, but there are no minutes.
Moving on to required action, Bill 21, Fixing Long-Term Care Amendment Act Until Death Do Us Part. I trust everybody's read that. And receive for information, Elgin County Council highlights, Heritage Elgin, there's Heritage Central Elgin Minutes from the Heritage Central Elgin meeting? Oh. Okay. Going back up to Bill 21. Is anybody in, sorry, Councilor Halpin?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we receive that for information and send correspondence supporting Bill 21 as requested.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Connors?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the correspondence from MPP Fife regarding Bill 21 be received for information and that staff be directed to send a response indicating council's support for the proposed legislation.
All those in favor? That motion carries. Okay, now we can go to receive for information. Elgin County Council highlights, minutes from Heritage Central Elgin meeting dated August 23rd, minutes from Heritage Central Elgin meeting dated September 23rd, Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, inventory of programs and services, Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, October 1st progress report, and one from Kettle Creek Conservation Authority quarterly progress report. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? Can I get a mover and a seconder that they be accepted? Councilor Graham, Councilor Connors.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Connors, the correspondence items number 1 through 6 be received for information and filed.
All those in favor? That motion carries. And Chief Administrative Officer, speaking to affordable housing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, we've had some previous correspondence of which I have sent you information from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Minister Calandra, with regards to the affordable housing and his request for a letter to be sent from all heads of council, identifying 5 action items that this council would support. We provided you with a report that, as we have gone through, that is the administration for the municipality has gone through the report and various other documents such as your affordable house policy, looking at our official plan. It has been reviewed by the fire chief and other heads of or department heads. And we've determined that many of the recommendations have already been put into place. That was identified in the 74 items with asterisks put into place by the ministry itself or in the process thereof. We also identified those items of which the municipality has already implemented in the last review of your official plan. And we did ask Chief Ormond to also put forward his comments and thoughts on the impacts of decisions that we may need to look at as we're building in density within our areas. That is to not say we would stop and not move forward with those recommendations, but certainly from a safety perspective, as a municipality, need to be aware of how we will address those issues. Once we have reviewed all of the recommendations, we did draft 5 items that we felt best represented this community. one of which we have already implemented, and then those which we feel would be beneficial to our rural community. So before you, you have our report, sort of outlining all of that information, the letter that we have drafted with the 5 recommendations, and then I believe also an appendix to information we thought the ministry may need to understand, which would support a rural community such as ours. With that, it is a requirement for this letter to be submitted to the ministry by October 16th. We are bringing it to council's awareness. We are asking for you to accept it for information, and then just your approval on the recommendations for mayor to move forward.
Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to move this? Councillor Graham? Go ahead.
And sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair. So the letter was September 15th that it came. Did we, I don't recall getting a copy of that letter before this. Did we have that?
Ms. Greeno?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor. The letters went to heads of council. They did not come to all council members, so they were sent to all heads of council. Previously, I had sent an email out to all of council acknowledging this letter and provided you with the document, the Affordable Housing Task Force, which outlined those 73 items, if council had any information.
Thank you. Did anybody want to move this? Councillor Bachman? Councillor Halpin?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report CAO 2223 regarding affordable housing letter in response to Minister Calandra be received for information, and that staff be directed to send the approved letter in response to the request from Minister Calandra.
All those in favor? That motion carries.
Can we call that vote, please?
Record? Sure.
Councillor Graham,
No.
Councillor Halpin,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Connors,
Yes.
Councillor Bogman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble.
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you.
Director of Infrastructure and Community Services. I trust is Mr. Brooks is speaking to the Albertson drain petition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report makes a recommendation to appoint Brandon Widner under Section 4 of the Ontario Drainage Act for a new branch to the Albertson drain. Brandon or Mr. Widner has already been hired by the engineer to prepare a report under Section 78 of the same drain. This will just be adding a new branch to the drain.
Does anybody have any questions to this? Okay. Anybody want to move it? Councillor Halpin, Councillor Watson.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Watson, that Council of the Municipality of Central Elgin appoint Brandon Widner, P.Eng. of Spreet Associates to complete a report under Section 4, in addition to a previous appointment under Section 78 of the Ontario Drainage Act for the Albertson drain.
All those in favor? That motion carries. Director of Fire Rescue Services, Chief Omerad, did you want to speak to anything on our monthly fire alarm activity?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Noble. Just to point out, the same as at the previous meeting, you'll see an asterisk on the total number for 2023 is 695 with an asterisk, and you'll see Beach Rescue has an asterisk. Again, because they were calls minor in nature, they did not go through our central dispatching agency, but they were logged by the lifeguards as being an incident in which they responded to. So you'll see the 695 should actually include an additional 37 calls. And that would have been for the first week of September when the lifeguards were on duty until Labor Day weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Omrad. Does anybody have any questions? I truly appreciate all the work that that your team does for us in Central Elgin. Is there a mover and a seconder for that report? Councillor Connors, Councillor Watson.
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report FS 1123 regarding monthly alarm activities report September 2023 be received for information.
All those in favor? That motion. Director of Asset Management and Development Services, monthly building report. I don't know if Jeff wants to speak to that or Ms. Greeno.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The information that's provided in these reports has been collected by the asset management staff. So we'll be reporting into through me. However, if there are questions, I'm happy to take those away for council and return them as I find responses to them.
Does anybody have any questions to that? Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Bachman, Councillor Halpin.
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Bogman, seconded by Councillor Halpin, the report AMDS 4423 regarding August 2023 monthly, September 2023 monthly building report be received for information.
All those in favor? That motion carries. And September monthly bylaw report. Do we have a mover and a seconder to accept that? Councillor Watson, Councillor Halpin.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report AMDS 4523 regarding September 2023 monthly bylaw report be received for information.
All those in favor? That motion carries. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to make a point of clarification on the previous listing for the bylaws for consideration by council tonight as posted on the agenda. There were two pertaining to the two drains considered by the Court of Revision earlier this evening. Those have since been removed as there is a required appeal period for those bylaws. So those bylaws will be returned for council's consideration after the appeal period has been concluded. I apologize for any confusion.
Okay, so for the bylaws, 2830, 2831, 2833, and 2834. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Watson, Councillor Connors.
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaws 2830, 2831, 2833, and 2834 be taken collectively.
All those in favor? That motion carries. And so a first and second reading of bylaws 2830, 2831, 2833, and 2834. Mover and seconder. Councillor Watson, Councillor Halpin.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that bylaws 2830, 2831, 2833, and 2834 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? That motion carries. Third reading. Okay, one more time. Bylaws 2830, 2831, 2833, and 2834 be read a third time and finally passed. Councillor Halpin will move it. Councillor Connors will second. Okay, and we'll call the vote. Motion carries. And that brings us to public notice. And seeing none, motions and notice of motions. Other business. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. At my last meeting for the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, we started to talk about our budget, which we'll be working on soon. And one of the other members of the board did in particular request that we mention that to our councils, because the anticipated increase was higher than what they felt comfortable with, and they want everyone to know what's going on. So with the changes in money that's being received from the provincial government, our conservation authority felt that their healthiest and least unsustainable budget would be at a 20% increase, but that by draining some of their reserves, they could conceivably come as low as 9%. At this time, we've voted to ask them to prepare based on the 9%, and we're going to take a look from there. But it was requested that we all make mention of this to our councils so that as we prepare our own budgets, we're aware of it. And so that if anyone would like to, for example, email me any feedback about it or anything that I can bring forward, that's an option for us as well.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. I know that the conservation authorities have been squeezed a little bit from other funding that they have, and so that does lean back on the municipalities, and regrettably, we're going to see that. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything under other business? No? Okay. Mover and seconder to proceed into,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We did have a notice for a closed session to occur this evening. However, I would recommend for council to defer. I am waiting for some more information to be able to provide to you. I thought I may have an opinion from legal counsel this evening, so I can present that at my next meeting.
thank you. Okay. Glasses back. Okay. We'll slide down to bylaws to confirm the proceedings of tonight. Bylaw 2835, confirmation bylaw. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Halpin, Councillor Connors.
Mr. Chair, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaw 2835 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? The motion carries. Once again, bylaw 2835 be read second and third time and finally passed? Or the third time? Okay. Mover and seconder. Councillor Connors, Councillor Watson. All those in favor? That motion carries. And adjournment motion. Councillor Halpin, Councillor Bachman. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone.